I used a T-square and some clamps to try to make sure that the cross members were perpendicular to the sideboards. After I got the base frame made, I checked it diagonally to measure for it to be square. You'll see me pre-drilling these screw holes with a countersink drill bit. I'm drilling the holes in advance to ensure that these 2x4s don't split when I screw them together. The countersink allows the head of the screw to sink below the surface of the wood. In this scene, you can see that the frame is sitting on the floor on its casters, and then I cut the 3/4 inch plywood and squared it up on the frame and used some 1 5/8 inch screws to screw the deck down onto the frame. Next, I framed out one of the 3 walls that I'm going to build for this lumber cart. I had already made my marks on the deck where I was going to put each of the 3 walls. So I'm locating the wall now and going to level it up and make sure it's level and square before I screw it down. I'm also using some 1x6s on each end as diagonal supports to hold the wall square. This wall measures 8 foot long and 45 inches tall. You'll notice that I turned the 2x4s sideways, and this was to give myself more storage space in the cart. I think when everything is tied together, it'll be strong enough without having to use it as conventional wall studs. After the first wall was screwed down and leveled, I installed the back wall. This is going to be the very back wall, and I'm going to make it square and perpendicular to the other wall. And I'm going to use a 1x6 and tie them together. Then I'm going to make the middle wall, and I only had a couple of 2x2s left for this wall. And I'm going to slide it in between the other 2 walls and square it up and make it parallel to the other 2 walls. You can see on each end that I have 1x6s holding all the walls parallel to each other. Those 1x6s are temporary on each end, and they'll be removed once everything else is in place. Now, working on the 2 center walls, I'm going to put 3 2x2 cross members between each of the pairs of studs. These cross members are going to provide rack storage for longer pieces of lumber. These cross members are about 8 inches long each. Once these cross members are all screwed together, it really stiffens up the structure of this storage cart. Next, it came time to screw on a top on the 3 walls, and I cut a 21 inch by 8 foot long piece of 3/4 inch plywood and used some 1 5/8 inch screws and screwed it down to the top of the walls. This really stiffened up the structure as well. With the rack all built, now it's time to build the storage bins. The front of the storage bins are 1 foot by 8 foot long, and I'm going to have 4 dividers in between. And those dividers are a special shape and have special dimensions. Those dimensions will be included in the instructions and the plans in the link in the description below the video. I used clamps and T-squares to try to keep these dividers and the front board all perpendicular to each other. I pre-drilled and used some 2-inch screws to screw them together. I also used some Titebond wood glue to stick them together before I screwed them together. And I'll give you a backside view so you can see what I'm doing to square them up. For the back of the bins, I'm going to use 3/4 inch plywood. I had 2 pieces left over, and together they totaled 39 inches tall and 8 foot wide. I used clamps to hold them in place while the glue set, and I put some screws into the plywood as well. My wife, who didn't want to be on video, helped me set the bins in place, and I used some clamps to clamp them up against the studs, and again to make sure everything was perpendicular and square. And then I screwed the back of the bins to the studs, and I screwed the bottom of the bins to the floor, and made sure everything was square and perpendicular. It's going to be nice for this lumber to have a home and have a place where it's supposed to be, so that I can check inventory for the next job before I go buy new material. Now you can see the tall, narrow part is for full sheets of plywood, and then I have the racks there for the lumber, which is about 8 inches wide. And then I have 4 large storage bins in the front. And then I have 3 large storage bins in the front. I'm going to go ahead and put some plywood in a couple of them to divide them in half, but I really like being able to put those blue buckets in one of the bins so that for my shorter drop-offs, so that I can take them to the fire pit and go burn them. I really do hope you learned something today. Thanks for watching. There's more to come.